Many thanks for joining us on News Focus for today. Of course, we'll be discussing a number of issues in the news, starting from the foreign scene. We'll talk about the assassination attempt on former President of the United States of America, Donald Trump. And also we'll come back to Nigeria and talk about the financial autonomy that has been granted to local government councils, and also President Tinubu's creation of the Ministry of Livestock. And joining me to discuss all of these is Dr. Omoshola Deji, who's a political scientist and analyst. So let's start with the assassination attempt on President Donald Trump. Now, for the first time in more than 4 decades, a man who was once elected president of the United States was wounded in an assassination attempt when a gunman who appeared to have crawled onto a nearby roof opened fire on Mr. Trump at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on Saturday evening. The explosion of political violence came at an especially volatile moment in American history and further inflamed an already stormy campaign for the White House. After Secret Service snipers killed the shooter, the former president and a putative Republican presidential nominee was taken to a nearby hospital for treatment and declared fine by his campaign. Of course, after conducting more than 100 interviews, searching the suspect's home and vehicle, and cracking down into his cell phone, FBI investigators were still searching for the motive that led a 20-year-old Pennsylvania man, Thomas Crook, to attempt to assassinate a former president. The current U.S. President, Joe Biden, condemned the assassination attempt shortly afterwards. Of course, like I said before, joining me to talk about this is Dr. Omoshola Deji, who's a political analyst and political scientist. Now, let's start with this now. Doctor, if you can hear me, please let us know you're on. Hello, doctor. Are you there with us?
Yes, I can hear you. Loud and clear.
All right. A former president and a candidate in the next presidential election in the world's biggest democracy was attacked. What does this mean to the democracy and political sphere in the United States of America?
What it means to the democracy and political sphere in the United States is that democracy all over the world is a work in progress. It just shows that no democracy is perfect. It's just that one democracy is more advanced than the other. But despite the imperfection in U.S. democracy, like I said in some fora, it is still incomparable with our own democracy. We are still, years ahead in terms of the U.S. democracy. But it shows that no democracy is perfect at this point in time, and that every democracy usually has its own inefficiencies. For example, in the United States, you could see that it is synonymous with some of the things that we have in Africa, whereby we have what I can call fanatic candidates that are willing to go all out. Fanatic candidate doesn't really mean that candidate like the opposition candidate, but that candidate may not like you, may not want to see you at all, and at the end of the day, there are also candidates that will like you. But in this instance, we can say that against Trump is definitely for the gain of Biden, despite the fact that Biden apparently did not send anybody to go and attempt to kill Trump. But the thing is that an action against another political party, is the gain of any other political. So if Trump had died, in that Pennsylvania incident, definitely it would have been Biden's gain. But this thing that had happened, definitely it is an advancement in the campaign of Trump. Don't forget that during the first debate that happened, Biden performed woefully, and that performance, if debate is anything to go by, if debate is the only criteria, because I was opportune to watch it live, if debate is the only criteria for presidential emergence, definitely I would give the the presidential seat to Biden if I am the only one that can decide it. Now, having failed in the debate to convince indecisive voters, now this is happening that can give Trump what we call sympathy vote. Sympathy vote emerges when a particular candidate is perceived to have suffered so many injustices and witch hunt and attempt on his life. People will now begin to have sympathy on that candidate. People will begin to have pity on him. And over time, that pity will turn into affection. And when you now get to the ballot, that affection is what will now push you to vote for such candidates. You don't forget that the Donald Trump stood trial, and the trial is coming close to the election. So the Biden, that trial should have come maybe the first year or second year of Biden's presidency. But Donald Trump was quite crafty. He didn't behave as if he wants to contest the election. He just, came out and he gave the narrative that he is contesting again based on the failure of the Biden presidency. So now that he is coming out and he has been facing one trial or the other, and he performed very well during the debate, and now there's an assassination attempt on his life. All these, will eventually generate sympathy vote for him. And don't forget that Donald Trump is not a non-performing president. I repeat, Donald Trump is not a non-performing president. What made him lose the election the last time was because of COVID-19. If you look at Donald Trump, he operated an hours is hours policy instead of an hours is yours policy. What do I mean by that? You see, in countries all over the world, there are countries that they operate an hours is hours policy, meaning that the citizens first. They are not willing to share. So if you look at Trump's policy, he doesn't want to spend much on military aid. He doesn't want the jobs to go to the migrants. He believes America should be for Americans, which means that ours is ours policy. Unlike some countries like Canada that believe that, okay, ours can also be yours. This is our job, but if you are a migrant, if you are a foreigner, this job can also be yours. The country is ours, but if you are a migrant, if you are a foreigner, the country can also be yours. So because Donald Trump made America first for Americans, so the white supremacy, the white Americans, and blacks that doesn't wish, or other migrants that have valid documents came first in America. So these people like Donald Trump. And another thing is that the veterans, because there was no much war under the Donald Trump, they like it because they know there's no way they will go to war and people won't die. So we cannot say that Donald Trump was an unperforming president. The only thing that went in his disfavor was that COVID-19 came and he wasn't unprepared, and he was making incoherent statements like you can use detergent, you can use bleach, all those kind of incoherent statements, and that can be adduced to maybe because he's under pressure. We also saw that in the 2023 election where Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who appears to be more mentally stable now, was making some incoherent statements like Bala blue, Bulaba, So when they are old like that and they are under pressure, maybe they make incoherent statements. But Donald Trump is a performing president coming back at a time whereby he is crusading that Joe Biden's administration has performed woefully. He is criticizing the war in Ukraine and Russia, making boasts that Biden Putin will not dare invade Ukraine if he was the president. So all these things, have made the democracy to be heated up. And don't forget that the two candidates are very strong candidates. These are people that have tasted the seat of presidency in the United States. It's just like we're having the American version of the Muhammadu Buhari and Goodluck Jonathan era. Don't forget that Buhari was the head of state, so he has led Nigeria before. Goodluck Jonathan was the incumbent. Such election is always very, very tough, and that is the repetition of what we've had in the United States. It only shows that it's going to be an interesting November in the United States. But so far, so good. The security agencies need to up their game, and if anything is go back to Donald Trump, the attacks from the both campaign camp of the both candidates, it's obvious that the election is going to be very heated up and a very interesting one, especially with the retaining of Electoral College.
Thank you very much. I'm glad you mentioned a few of the concerns being raised by most Americans there. Of course, you talked about sympathy votes that could come to Donald Trump after this assassination attempt or as a result of this assassination attempt. You also talked about his policies that he intends to roll out. And I would like to ask you, what do you think this would mean to migrants staying in America or, of course, maybe non-whites or non-Americans or you talked about the white supremacist movement that is perceived to be pushed by Donald Trump. What do you think this means to people of other races that are staying in America?
Well, I don't think the white supremacist movement is perceived to be pushed by Donald Trump. He has led America before, so we can judge by his antecedents and some of his policies. And I can tell you that it's going to be a very tough time. It's going to be a very hard time if Donald Trump becomes the president again, because just like Joe Biden did when he emerged as president, he's first going to rubbish the Biden's policies. And one of the Biden's policies is, embrace all. But Biden has this embrace all policy, and he has appointed black people into some strategic positions in his cabinet. But Donald Trump, on the other hand, it is more of a white supremacist. And don't forget that it was during Donald Trump's time that Nigerians were restricted from entering the United States. Don't forget that it is during Donald Trump's time that he decided to build a wall between the United States and Mexico. So we can say that Donald Trump is somebody that we all know, and we don't expect a kind of like dramatic shift from his personality, especially coming at a time that he has absolute nothing to lose, because he can only govern the United States for 2 terms. And now this being his second term, definitely is going to go all out to implement his policy. So I don't see migrants having a great time. For example, Joe Biden, in his embrace all policies, recently said that if you are a migrant and you have children, or you are married to a migrant, but you are an undocumented migrant, he has asked the government agency to collate all the names. He's trying to kind of like do something in that regard. You can call it politics that would kind of like bring vote for him, but it won't bring absolute vote for him. You know why? Because of the attitude of some of the migrants, especially Africans. Some of we Africans there, once they have their own papers, it will be as if, the road and opportunity should close for other people. So such people at the end of the day may not want to vote for Joe Biden. It may sound funny, but that is the reality of how it is in America, not just America, in the UK or any other country that you go to. So right, I foresee a very tough time, and I foresee, a very
Crook is a 20-year-old boy who had access to a rifle, and that brings to the fore the much debated issue of gun violence. Do you think it's about that time that America, or for America, to give more attention to the topic of gun control?
Well, I think gun control cannot, gun possession eradication, to put it like that, cannot be achieved in the United States, but gun control can be achieved because, people in the United States all over the years are used to owning one form of firearms or the other, and whether you like it or not, it has helped to stem insecurity to a certain extent, because if you are carrying gun and you know that I myself have guns, you will think twice before you come and invade me and attack me. And that's why people have been using the America case as an argument for Nigeria, based on the rise in banditry, kidnapping, and terrorism in Nigeria. But I think what the United States can do is arms education. I think arms education is absolutely more necessary in the United States. I don't think there's much arms education, because if you own arms, be educated that these arms, can only be used when you are in distress, when you are in trouble, when there is a threat to your life. A threat to your life should also be well defined. If we are joking, and somebody said, "Oh, I will kill you," that doesn't amount to a threat to your life. You must really be under real significant threat before those firearms can be used. And I think that there should be arms education in the sense that if you are not a law enforcement agent, if you are to shoot, it's either you shoot in the arm or in the leg. But if you shoot somebody, for example, in the chest, then and you are found guilty of having done so unreasonably, there should be a strong fine. Another thing is maybe there should be an increment in the age of people that can, own arms and use firearms. For example, if the age of people that can own and use firearms is moved up to maybe like 40 years, it is assumed that if you are a family, at least the father or the mother, if they're up to maybe 40 or 35 years, can use firearms, based on the assumption that you are more intelligent. Then as you grow old, your level of temperament would have been well managed, having been more exposed to life experiences. So I think arms education is greatly needed, because exposition to arms in America have solved a problem in the sense that the kind of problem we have in Nigeria, but it has also exposed the country to another round of whereby if you hate people, if you feel that you don't like the way people are going in a place, you can just go there and open fire on people. I think that needs to be controlled.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Now let's move on with the conversation and move on to the next topic, bringing it back home here. The Supreme Court, in a recent judgment, has granted the local government councils full financial autonomy. The 7-man panel in the judgments delivered by Justice Emmanuel Agim declared that the 774 local government councils in the country should manage their funds themselves. The apex courts held that the power of the government is portioned into 3 arms of government: the federal, the state, and the local government. The courts further declared that a state government has no power to appoint a caretaker committee, and the local government council is only recognizable by a democratically elected government, stating that a democratically elected government is sacrosanct and non-negotiable. As we already know, before now, the state and local government councils were running a joint account, which was dominantly controlled by the state government. And also, we have seen there have been different reactions from various governors. One of those has been from the governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde, who has maintained that the judgment has created a constitutional lacuna that will throw up different challenges at the local government level. Let's take a listen to Seyi Makinde. We'll be right back.
Let me thank you all, for joining this important consultative meeting. I want us to discuss the decision of the Supreme Court as it concerns financial autonomy, so-called financial autonomy of the local government councils, because I believe a lacuna has been created between that Supreme Court decision and the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. We all I swore to uphold the Constitution, but the law is the law. If the law says, if the law is in conflict, it behoves on us to look for our own homegrown solution that will ensure that we have transparency, we can operate, and our people, because when 2 elephants are fighting, the grass will suffer. We are people that we know what is good for our people. We can run our own affairs. The federal government is not superior constitutionally to the state government, where they have more resources than the states, but the jurisdiction is coordinate.
if you can still hear us now, what is your reaction to this judgment of full financial autonomy that has been granted to local government councils? And of course, Seyi Makinde is saying that this has created a constitutional lacuna.
Well, the judgment and the speech of Seyi Makinde leaves quite a number of things to touch on, and I'll be very brief about it because I have the opportunity to speak about this on air in the morning. Now, you see, first, you don't debate the judgment of a Supreme Court. Now, whether it is right or wrong, in a constitutional democracy, you are bound to obey. That must be clear. Then, I disagree with Governor Seyi Makinde that the federal government is not superior to the state government. No, that is absolutely wrong. There are 3 tiers of government. The federal government comes first, the state government comes second, and the local government comes third. So what the court have said is that you cannot be in a federal system of government. To put it in context, it is like a family, so you cannot be the father, the mother, and the child at the same time. What the states have been doing is to try to be the mother and the child at the same time. And the Supreme Court said, no, you cannot continue to do like that. You cannot confront and hold on to another arm of government in a federal system. So the thing is, it is just commonsensical that if you have your own fund and the local government is another arm of government of its own, those local governments should be able to have their own fund. But then again, Seyi Makinde makes a very strong point in the sense that what happens when there are words that are written in the Constitution, that it is written black and white in a plain man's language, and the Supreme Court now gives a judgment contrary to those plain man language that's written in the Constitution. That itself is a recipe for anarchy. What should have been done is constitutional amendment to make sure that the Constitution is amended in such that that line that makes the state to hold the fund of the local government in form of a joint account is being expunged from the Constitution, because the Supreme Court itself now is now doing what it is accusing the state of doing. Because to my mind, as a political scientist, lawyers can argue that, the judgment of the court is final, and everybody must obey the court. Well, that's correct based on the kind of constitutional democracy we practice. But I can tell you as a political scientist that the judiciary, the Supreme Court in this instance, has just usurped the power of the legislature, because the judgment makes the Supreme Court to rewrite and the function of the judiciary, except if our teachers have been wrong, is to interpret the law. You are to interpret the law, not to make the law. So lawyers may argue otherwise in defense of their possession, of their profession, but I, as a political scientist, believe that the judiciary should not make law in a democratic system. It should be the legislature that is making the law. By the judgment of the Supreme Court have made a law, because that judgment is contrary to the Constitution, that there should be a joint account for the state and the local government. So the Supreme Court should have made, an order that, the law should be amended, and the constitutional debate is going on. Whether it will now sail true or not, whether the governors will intervene, is a different ball game, and that is the beauty of democracy. You play your game, but for the Supreme Court to now sit and say that to their mind that the allocation of the local government should be given to them, it may be moral, it may be logical, but that doesn't make it constitutionally right, because it goes against the dictate of the Constitution, and their job is to interpret the Constitution. Don't forget that in a democracy is adjudged as the best form of government, because it believes that knowledge is not knowledge does not belong to one man. If you have a case in court, your case can best be determined by 7 justices of the Supreme Court marks 5 or 3 at the appeal court and 1 at the high court. All these judges cumulatively amount to like 12. But in a democracy, we have a national assembly comprising of 300 and something House of Rep members and 100 and something senators. Are you telling me that the wisdom of 12 people in the judiciary, the judges, are more than the wisdom of about 500 people that emerge from different areas covering Nigeria? No. So the Supreme Court in this instance cannot wake up and say that, oh, this is not the interpretation of the Constitution. They are to interpret the law and not to make a law. So, and I find it so unfortunate that our judiciary, sometimes the judgments that they give, is becoming too questionable. As good as the judgment sounds, as logical as it is, as beneficial as it is to democracy, as much as it curbs corruption, as much as it curbs impunity in government, it is apparently against the dictates of the Constitution. And what is the role of the judiciary? Like the lady justice, the blindfolded lady justice, that judiciary symbol, I can't remember, and then maybe the justiciar or something like that. You have to weigh the evidence, not to be swayed by maybe any emotional or something. So it should be by constitutional amendment. Now, the Supreme Court has imposed a fait accompli on the legislature because that law must be amended. So what if it is not amended? What if the legislature now twists that portion of the Constitution to mean the same thing? Does it mean that the judiciary can now kind of like dictate for the legislature? Does it mean that if the legislature has a law, the judiciary, and it is not black and white, the judiciary can just look up and overrule it? Democracy, as I said, in a constitutional democracy, believes that knowledge does not belong to one man. That's why there are checks and balances in a democratic system. So the Supreme Court, the judgment is nice, it is morally correct, but as Governor Seyi Makinde said, it leaves a great flaw. And some of the governors will now say that, okay, well, the Supreme Court has given judgment, but they decide to uphold the Constitution. Will we say that those governors are acting in impunity? So whether we like it or not, we need a constitutional amendment in this regard.
Very good summation, but there's a thought that comes to mind now. Can it really be achieved? He's talking about this financial autonomy, because let's not forget, the local government council elections are conducted by the state government. And some people have said, oh, this is just a coronation event that the state government used to put their loyalists in place. And, so much can happen, could still happen, and you could still have a loyalist that will still, connive with the state governments to loot funds, if this is what this particular government is supposed to deal with. What do you think about this?
Well, the thing is, a very good question at that, I must say. The thing is, it can be achieved, but it can only be partially achieved, in the sense that the local government, the state government rather, are still the one conducting this election. The electoral commission chairman in the state is being appointed by the governor. The state funds are being used to conduct these elections. So definitely, whoever we emerge in any local government must have the blessing of the governor. So the governors would have an agreement, and they will go ahead to put their loyal boys, their political stooge, in all the local government with an agreement that if the fund comes to you, this is the so percentage that you'll be remitting back to us. And don't forget that because politics is lucrative in our climate, we have a lot of career politicians. So because these local government chairmanship aspirants are desperate for power, they will agree to whatever their governors say. And at the end of the day, they will eventually be remitting the funds back to the state government. Be that as it may, we can't overrule the fact that there will be some stubborn local government chairman that will go against the agreement. Just as some of the governors usually go against what they stand and agree with their godfathers. Definitely we will be seeing that in local government as well, because some of them, once the money enters their hands, they will just go to the governor and begin to rule out different kind of like important things before them that they must use money for. You will see a local government chairman that will go to the governor and say, "Oh, governor, in the community under my jurisdiction, the rain that fell yesterday created a thunderstorm that removed about the roof of 50. We need to help them. We need to assist them. The flood, carried 2 people away." So they will read out important things in such a way that the governor will be sympathetic to them. It's just as if you have promised to give me money, then you come and meet me that your mother is sick, your father is sick, your uncle is sick. That is why you will not be able to give me so amount. If I go against you, it will now be to look that, oh, I am a wicked person. So you will see some local government politicians that will try to outsmart these governors. Another thing is that some of them will even twist the governor. So the Supreme Court has empowered the local government politician in the sense that, for example, in Edo and Ondo State, an election is coming up. And if you are a local government chairman and you are popular in your community, when the governorship aspirants are coming to your community and they need your help, you would have agreed with them that, okay, I am popular in this community, but one thing is that if I support you and you eventually become a governor, not touch my allocation from the local government. And because these governors are desperate for power as well, they will tend to agree with the political stakeholders at the local government level. So most states that have off-cycle elections will be twisted by doing incumbent local government, because they will make them to sign an agreement with them that they won't touch the allocation for their support. So all these, it won't, the judgment of the Supreme Court has shown that it won't totally solve the problem, but at least the thing is, it gives more power, it gives more funds, it gives more control to the local government, and that is quite very important. That is one of the things Nigeria needs, especially the fact that we have greedy governors, we have selfish governors that doesn't want the governor, that doesn't want the local government to grow. But one point that I must add is that the initiator of this court proceeding that led to the judgment, President Tinubu himself, is a beneficiary of this thing. He ruled Lagos for it. Now that he is the president, he has gone against what he himself benefits from. 2 factors can be adduced to that. Is it that the president, has lost, what the military people call the esprit de corps spirit? Is it that the political brotherhood spirit is now lost? Is it that he is trying to burn the bridge that he himself has crossed, whereby he has enjoyed enormous power and resources, and now that he is president, he wants to deny the current crop of governors from enjoying such powers? Now, the second factor is that could it be that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is now politically mature? Could it be that he is now politically mature than before? He now sees these things as a... My argument is the way we will test that is for the president himself to release some of the powers that is with him at the federal level that is unjust, or some of the powers with him that will benefit the state government. One of such is the president is an advocate of state police. Is it that he is advocating for state police when he was governor because he doesn't have that force power, to kind of like do his bidding? Now that he is the president, he initiated the state police agenda, but the state police has died a natural death. So if he can use his influence to influence the National Assembly to provide to go back to the old national anthem, I believe he can also use that influence to make sure that the police bill is speedily passed. So is he doing this thing because he is politically matured, or is doing it to tame the governors, to weaken the powers of the governors, and to kind of like burn a bridge that he has crossed? The days ahead will definitely unveil that. But if he is politically matured, then he should be able to give the state control over their resources. The federal government in Nigeria has too much power. It has enormous power than it should be in a federal system. It is as if we are operating a unitary system. So if it is about political maturity, if it is about development as argued by the president, then he himself is now obligated to lead by example by relinquishing undeserved powers in his treaty.
Of course, some people have the idea that, you know, to achieve a steady or a stable democracy, it takes so much processes, and maybe just as you say, the president has evolved and turned out to be matured enough to take all of these decisions. But one thing comes to mind: some people have been worried, have expressed concern about how the executive bypassed the National Assembly to, you know, get this law passed, or this judgment from the Supreme Court, and, you know, without allowing the National Assembly member to deliberate upon this and come up with a suggestion, or come up with their own decision. And there's been so much worry about how the executive have used the judiciary to, you know, somewhat achieve some of their aims. What do you have to say about this?
Well, the thing is, I am bothered that the judiciary is having too much powers than it should in a democracy. And that is why I have argued in intellectual forums that what we have right now is not really democracy in the true sense of it. It is what we call judicracy, a judicratic system of government. In the sense that if you look at it, the people in a democracy are to determine who will govern them. But in the true sense of it, whether at the federal or the state level, the national legislature level, it is the judiciary that has been determining who will rule the people, because most of the elections, you know, end up at the law court. Now, the problem I have with that is that now the judiciary is now determining the mode of governance, because as it is now, don't mistake me. The thing is, the judgment of the Supreme Court, it is good, it is sound, it is logical, it is what Nigeria needs. But the truth is, the judiciary itself is an advocate of due process. You know, and it is always argued by lawyers that due process matters. In other words, it is not only the result that matters, but the process of the result. So we have a system whereby the judiciary is determining who will hold the political office, and now, unfortunately, the judiciary is determining that how governance will be run. What could have been done alternatively is a synergy. I believe there should be some intergovernmental collaboration whereby the judiciary should be able to kind of like speak with the leadership of the National Assembly, and there should be some coordination between the executive and the legislature and the judiciary, although they should be independent from each other, but there should be some collaboration in such a way that democracy is not ambushed by the judiciary. What we have now is a total ambush by the judiciary. And don't forget that most of the system in Nigeria are flawed. If you want to know how the judicial system of a country is, you don't need to be a lawyer. If you enter a new country, you don't need to be a lawyer. Just look at the health system. If the health system is okay, look at the education system. If the education system is okay, look at the economy, look at the infrastructure. If those are okay, you can adjudge that the judicial system will also be okay. Coming back home, if you come to Nigeria, if you see that the health system is in shambles, the education, the infrastructure is ineffectual, don't expect a super judiciary. If a country is ridden by corruption, don't expect a super efficient judiciary, because those judicial officers are a product of that flawed education system. They are a product of that flawed socioeconomic, cultural system. They are a product of that community that corruption is being ridden. So the thing is, in such a system, we should be able to fight for institutional efficiency, not judicial pronouncement, and more judicial pronouncement. So the states themselves should be able to do things right, because what is needed in a democracy, in a kind of democracy, for it to be effective, is you not coming to the table with greed. If the state governors are not coming to the table with greed, if the presidency is not coming to the table with greed, if the local governments are not coming to the table with greed, if you and I are not coming to the table with greed, then definitely the system would work, because we all know what to do and how we should do it in a functional democracy as is being done in some of those countries that we copied. So apart from the judiciary or the state or any law we can kind of like implement, the most important thing is obey the principle of do not come to the table with greed. So in a democratic system, if we do not come to the table then things will begin to become more functional and effectual for the people.
So now, while there is so much excitement about his judgment expressed by a lot of Nigerians, let's not forget that politicians will still be politicians, and there's still tendencies, of course, tendencies of some corrupt practices to be perpetrated by these local council chairmen. How do we ensure a better performance from these council chairmen with this financial freedom that they have suddenly received?
Well, we can expect a better performance is political participation. You see, political participation in Nigeria is quite on the low. People are not interested in participating in politics. People kind of just say, oh, they know what they want to do, they know how they will do it, they know who will win the election. That should not be the case. You must be interested in politics and you must participate fully in the process. And like I always say, that if politicians know that the only way that they can gain power in a political system is for them to win the election, is for the vote of the people to count, definitely they would not rig the election in any way. So for me, I think that in our political system, the people should be more interested in politics and government. If they show more interest, like it's just like in a university system. If politicians are like students in the university, if you allow them, students just want to matric and they should be certificate the next day. So it is the university and the lecturers that will make sure that they put policies in place to checkmate malpractice and to make sure the students study. So in a democratic system, the people are the boss. You have to realize that these people, they are working for you. You are the one that give them the power. So you should be able to kind of like hold them accountable. Then we need strong institutions. We need strong systems. We don't need a system whereby the governor can just call the financial officer in the state and it will just they give the governor a humongous amount of money in a questionable manner from the state coffers, just as it is being adjudged in Kogi State. So we need strong institutions that can withstand pressure. We were speaking about the United States, which are strong institutions. My parents, during Trump first term, went to the legislature in the US to ratify the election that he and his boss has lost. The truth is, can that happen in the United States? If President Bola Ahmed Tinubu contests again and he lost the election, will a Kashim Shettima boldly go to the National Assembly if we operate the US system to go and ratify that election? They would have used all their powers to kind of like influence the outcome of the election. Another thing is that we need to reduce premium on politics. It is only in Nigeria that when you go for a political office, you are poor today, the next day you are a millionaire and you are a billionaire. So long as this continues to happen, people will be rushing into politics. But when the premium in politics is on the low, people will find alternative things to do. So and we need to kind of like make sure that the state begin to control these resources, because if you are a governor and you know that you have to make money before you pay salary, you know that you have to harness your resources before you can pay your workers and build infrastructure. You are only paying tax to the federal government. Every charlatan, political scallywag will not want to be a governor. Nigeria is the only country whereby it is easy for any ragtag to wake up tomorrow morning and say, oh, I want to become a governor. Because why? The intellectual rigor of that office, is not enormous. So when we begin to put all these things in place, we'll see that we will have a better system and everybody will now begin to behave the way they're supposed to behave. So politics will only attract interested minds that won't be greedy, right, that won't be selfish, that won't be all about
Let's just move on to the next part, to the last part of this conversation. President Bola Tinubu recently announced the creation of the Federal Ministry of Livestock Development. The news emerged on Tuesday afternoon as the president inaugurated the Renewed Hope Livestock Reform Implementation Committee at the Presidential Villa Abuja, which is aimed at resolving persistent farmer-herders clash or conflict. the minister of this ministry has not been announced yet. Now, my question to you is, what is your reaction to the creation of another ministry, actually, at such a time as this for the country? And also, just in one breath, there's this idea that the ministry would check these almost never-ending farmer-elder clashes that have been ongoing for far too long. Do you share the same thoughts? Just in one breath, please. Let's round up.
I think my first reaction when I heard the news was, we need a thinking presidency. We need a president that can think. We need a presidency, that is capable of thinking logically and taking wise decisions. Except my agric teachers are wrong, except those that study agric are wrong. Agric is mainly about two things, livestock rearing, production. So if you already have a Ministry of Agriculture, why create another ministry for livestock? I haven't created that ministry. Will you now change the name of the Ministry of Agriculture to Ministry of Crop Production? Because as it is now, you can't have a Ministry of Livestock Development and you now have a Ministry of Agriculture, because agriculture is about livestock rearing and crop production. So I think that this ministry should have easily been made a department under the Ministry of Agriculture. If we go to our various ministries, for example, the Ministry of Interior, we have various departments under the Ministry of Interior. So in agriculture, livestock is already part of the Ministry of Agriculture, but if there is now an urgent need to address anything, have a department in the Ministry of Agriculture. You cannot have a government that will say, oh, I feel your pain, endure. And at the end of the day, you see the government not being conservative in its spending, because it takes a lot to establish a ministry. Don't forget that you need employees, you need buildings, you need computers, you need technologies, you need cars, you need manpower, you need finance, to kind of like establish a ministry. And right now, at this point in time, the minister in that ministry, once it kicks off, is going to have a driver that will be paid for, is going to have a car, is going to have. So why are we spending much when we have so little, as adjudged by the president himself? So I think it is a wrong step by the government to have created the ministry at this point in time. I think it is unwarranted. And to the major question that comes to everybody's mind, with the creation of this ministry, will this solve the problem of the farmer-elder clashes? The answer is no. Because as long as people who are elders believe that they can encroach somebody's land to eat crops, failing to realize that in some of these places, for example, the Niger Delta, their ancestral occupation is fishing and farming. In the southwest, yes, the ancestral occupation, if you go to the rural areas, is farming. So farming, it is to these people what cattle rearing is to you. So if you want to take another man's land, if you not another man's, labor, definitely there would be peace. So the cattle rearers should be able to realize that at least their fingers are not equal. Definitely, government cannot meet all their needs. And according to Bentham and Mills, the famous scholar, it says government exists for the interest of the greatest number of people. And I have argued that as an individual, you can survive on stick. By stick, I mean STEAK, meaning the synonyms for that is beef or meat. Now you can survive on beef, but the truth is you cannot survive on beef alone. So the thing is, whose interest should government protect? It should be the farmers first, because you can wake up tomorrow and say you want to become a vegetarian. I know friends that are vegetarian. They don't eat meat, they don't eat turkey, they don't eat chicken, and they are surviving. But you cannot wake up tomorrow and say you won't eat any crop of plantation. Even the cattle is there. Even the cattle need crop to grow. They need this crop to grow. So government should protect, because in the statement of the president.
We've been speaking with Dr. Omoshola Deji, who is a political analyst and a political scientist. Thank you very much for joining us on News Focus today. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
That's where we have to call it a wrap on today's episode on News Focus. Until we come your way again next time to discuss on issues that make the news and, of course, shape our society. My name is Emmanuel Abia, and thanks for watching.